She said, "I'm not going back." And the entire room laughed, until the most dangerous king in the city smiled, because he already knew the truth, and in that moment, he decided who would be saved, and who would fall. But what no one expected was that the girl they tried to break would become the queen who destroyed them all. The rain did not fall gently over Boston that night. It struck the glass walls of the courthouse like something restless, something that refused to be ignored. The storm outside mirrored the tension building inside. A private custody hearing had just ended, and the air in the luxury lobby felt heavier than it should have. Lawyers moved in controlled silence, social workers whispered behind clipped professionalism, and security stood firm at every exit. Everything was under control. Everything, except her. Lena Hart stood in the center of the polished marble floor, her breath uneven, her hands trembling just enough to reveal the fear she was trying to bury. She looked small in that space, surrounded by authority, by systems that had already decided her fate before she even spoke. Returned to the State Protection Center. Safe. That was the word they used. But Lena knew better. Her eyes moved once, just once, toward the exits. Armed security stood there, unmoving, waiting for instruction. No one questioned the outcome. No one doubted the process. This was routine. Until she spoke. "I'm not going back." The sentence was not loud. It didn't need to be. It cut through the entire room like something sharper than any command. Silence followed instantly. Not confusion. Not outrage. Shock. Because refusal was not part of the system. Refusal created problems. The lawyers stiffened. The social workers exchanged quick, nervous glances. Someone stepped forward, ready to respond, to correct, to restore order before the moment could escalate. But then, he moved. Adrian Moetti had been standing near the far end of the lobby, slightly removed from the scene, his presence quiet but unmistakable. The king didn't need to stand at the center to control it. Power followed him naturally, filling every space he occupied without effort. He stepped forward slowly, deliberate, measured. Every movement carried weight. The room shifted instantly, attention pulling toward him without question. Conversations died before they could begin. Even the security guards adjusted subtly, their posture tightening as if the air itself had changed. Because it had. Lena saw him, and for a moment, her fear didn't dissipate. It sharpened. Because she knew who he was. Everyone did. Adrian Moetti didn't just influence the system. He built parts of it. The same protection center they were forcing her back into existed because of his public funding. His name was attached to it. His reputation tied to its credibility. Which meant one thing. He should be the last person she expected to stand against it. Their eyes met. Close. Not physically, but in a way that felt unavoidable. Adrian didn't speak immediately. He studied her. Not her defiance. Not her words. Her wrists. The faint marks hidden beneath the sleeve she kept pulling down instinctively. Small. Almost invisible. But not to him. His gaze didn't linger long enough for others to notice. But it was enough. His breath remained calm. His expression unchanged. Until a slight smile appeared. Not warm. Not reassuring. Something else. Something that didn't belong in a situation like this. Because Adrian already knew something no one else in that room did. Danger wasn't standing in front of him. It was built into the system behind her. A lawyer cleared his throat, stepping forward carefully. "Mr. Moetti, the matter has been resolved. We just need..." Adrian raised his hand. One simple motion. The words stopped instantly. No argument. No hesitation. Because when the king interrupted, silence followed. He stepped closer to Lena now, the distance between them shrinking until the tension in the air felt almost tangible. She didn't step back. She didn't move at all. Her heart pounding harder now. Not from fear alone. From uncertainty. "Say it again," Adrian said quietly. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Lena swallowed, her breath catching slightly, but her eyes didn't drop. "I'm not going back." The room held its breath. Because this wasn't refusal anymore. This was defiance in front of power. Adrian's gaze didn't leave her face. And for a moment, something shifted. Not in her. In him. Then he turned. Slowly. Facing the room. Facing the system. Facing the people who believed they were in control. His voice came out calm. Cold. Final. Lock every door. The command didn't echo. It landed. Heavy. Absolute. Security froze for half a second, then moved, because when the king gave an order, it was not questioned. It was executed. Adrian looked back at Lena, his expression unreadable now, but something behind it had already decided the outcome. "No one leaves this building," he said. And in that moment, everything changed. The word safe had always sounded like a promise. At St. Mesa Girls Center, it was used everywhere, printed on brochures, repeated in interviews, spoken by smiling officials who stood in front of cameras and talked about protection, healing, and second chances. The building itself looked exactly like what people expected. Clean hallways, soft lighting, quiet rooms designed to comfort broken lives. But Lena Hart learned quickly that some places didn't hide their danger in darkness. They hid it in perfection. The first night she arrived, she believed it. She had to. Because fear makes people hold onto anything that looks like safety. For a while, everything seemed normal. Structured routines, scheduled meals, therapy sessions that asked just enough questions to feel real. Staff members who smiled too often, spoke too gently, watched too closely. It took time for her to notice the details that didn't belong. Doors that locked from the outside, cameras placed where they didn't need to be, girls who disappeared without explanation, and silence. Always silence. No one talked about it, because everyone understood something without saying it. This wasn't a shelter. It was a system. Controlled. Calculated. Built to look safe while operating as something else entirely. Lena didn't fight it at first. She adapted. Because survival didn't come from resistance. It came from understanding. She learned when to speak, when to stay quiet, when to look afraid, and when to disappear into the background. She watched everything. Listened to conversations that weren't meant for her. Noticed patterns others were too broken to see. 3 years. That's how long she stayed inside that place. 3 years of pretending. 3 years of becoming invisible. But she didn't just survive. She changed. She was not a victim. The fear that once controlled her became something sharper. Something useful. It made her careful, observant, precise. She began noticing which girls were targeted first. The younger ones. The quieter ones. The ones who didn't fight back. So she stepped in. Not openly. Never openly. She positioned herself between them and attention. Redirected conversations. Created distractions. Built small moments of protection that no one noticed. Loyalty didn't exist in that place. But she created it anyway. Between the girls. Silent. Unspoken. Real. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't. And those failures stayed with her longer than anything else. She tried to escape once. Not recklessly. Not blindly. Carefully planned. Every step calculated the way she had learned to think. She reached the outer gate before they realized she was gone. For a moment, just a moment, she thought she made it. Then they found her. Not violently. Not loudly. But effectively. Because systems like that didn't need chaos to regain control. They brought her back. And after that, everything changed. Not around her. Inside her. Fear no longer made her freeze. It made her focus. She became stronger. Not physically. Mentally. Emotionally. Strategically. She stopped thinking like someone trapped. She started thinking like someone waiting. Waiting for the right moment. The right opportunity. The right mistake. And eventually, it came. A hearing. Legal. Clean. Controlled. On paper. It looked like a routine review of her placement. But Lena understood what it really was. A final decision. Not about her safety. About her silence. If she returned to St. Mercy again, she wouldn't come back out. That was the truth no one said. And that's why she stood in that courthouse and refused. Back in the present, Lena's breath remained uneven, her heart pounding as the memory settled into something heavier. The room around her felt distant now, like it didn't fully exist anymore. Adrian stood close enough to see it. Not just her fear, her truth. "You knew," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Lena nodded slightly, her voice lower now, steadier despite everything. "They weren't protecting us," she said. "They were choosing who to sell." The word lingered. Betrayal didn't begin inside the shelter. It began far above it, with people who funded it, approved it, trusted it. Adrian didn't react outwardly, but something in his posture shifted, because for the first time, His power had been used without his control. Lena hesitated for a moment. Then she moved. Carefully. Hand slipped down toward her shoe. The motion was small, almost unnoticeable. But Adrian saw it instantly. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Wait," he said. But Lena didn't stop, because this was the part that mattered most. The part she had risked everything for. Her fingers reached inside the sole lining, pulled something out. Small, hidden, protected. She looked at him, her breath catching just slightly as she held it up. "I didn't come empty," she whispered. A pause. Then, "I took their names." The moment Lena placed the folded slip of paper into Adrian Moetti's hand, the room changed. Not visibly, not loudly, but something beneath the surface shifted with quiet precision. Adrian didn't unfold it immediately. He didn't react the way anyone expected. His expression remained controlled, his posture unchanged, his breath steady as if nothing in that moment carried weight. But everyone in that room felt it, because power like his didn't need reaction to create fear. It created it through silence. Lena watched him carefully, her heart pounding, unsure if what she had just done would save her or seal her fate. She had carried those names for months, hidden close, protected through instinct and desperation. Every second she held onto them had been a risk. Now, they were no longer hers. They were his. Adrian finally unfolded the paper. Slowly, deliberately, his eyes scanned the list once. Then again, not because he didn't understand it, but because he was confirming something deeper. Names. Important ones. Senators. Judges. Businessmen with clean reputations and untouchable influence. The kind of people who didn't appear in places like St. Mercy, unless they owned parts of it. Lena's breath caught slightly as she watched his face, searching for something. Shock, anger, denial. She found none. Until his gaze paused. Just for a second. One name. Different from the others. Not public. Not expected. Internal. A captain. His captain. Someone inside his empire. That was the moment the slight smile appeared. Not soft. Not kind. Something colder. Something that didn't belong to comfort. Because this was not relief. This was confirmation. War had already begun. Adrian folded the paper carefully, slipping it into his pocket as if it were nothing more than a routine document. But the energy around him shifted instantly, his presence sharpening, tightening, becoming something far more dangerous than before. The lawyers noticed. The officials noticed. Even the guards felt it. Mr. Moetti, one of the senior attorneys, stepped forward, voice controlled but strained. "This matter has already been decided. The girl must be returned under state authority." Adrian didn't let him finish. He turned slightly, his gaze landing on the man with quiet precision. "No," he said. One word. No volume. No emotion. But absolute. The attorney froze, because refusal from him wasn't part of any process they could control. Adrian stepped forward, placing himself just slightly in front of Lena. Not touching, not shielding openly, but positioning himself between her and the system. "From this moment forward," he continued calmly, "she is under my protection." The room reacted immediately. Not with action, with panic. "You can't do that," another official said quickly. "There are legal structures." There were. Adrian corrected. His voice dropped into a near whisper, but it carried through the room with more force than shouting ever could. "Now there's me." Silence fell again, because power like his didn't negotiate. It replaced. Lena felt it. The shift. Not safety. Not yet. Something else. Control. Different, but still dangerous. Her instinct didn't relax. It sharpened. Because she didn't trust him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Behind them, one of the officials moved forward again, desperation slipping through his composed exterior. "If you interfere with this process, there will be consequences." The sentence didn't finish. Adrian's hand moved. Fast. Precise. The marble table beside him cracked under the impact of a single controlled strike. Not shattered. Not destroyed. But fractured enough to silence every word in the room. No chaos. Just proof of what he could do and what he would do. The message was clear. This wasn't a discussion anymore. No one spoke after that, because fear had taken its place. Adrian turned back toward Lena, his expression returning to its usual calm, as if nothing had happened. "Come," he said. Not a request. Not force. A decision. She hesitated, only for a second, because the choice wasn't between freedom and control anymore. It was between systems, and one of them had already tried to break her. She moved, close enough to follow, far enough to stay guarded. The courthouse doors opened under his command, the storm outside still raging as if nothing inside mattered to the world beyond it. The convoy was waiting, armored, prepared, controlled. Lena was placed inside without resistance, but not without awareness. Her eyes moved constantly, reading everything, measuring every detail. This wasn't safety. This was another cage, just built better. Adrian didn't sit across from her. He sat beside her, close, not touching, but present in a way that made distance impossible. Mine. The word lingered, not spoken, but felt. The convoy began moving, cutting through the storm-covered streets of Boston, headlights slicing through rain and darkness. Inside, silence held between them, tension unspoken, trust non-existent. Lena stared ahead. "I don't belong to you," she said quietly. Adrian didn't look at her. "I know," he replied. A pause. Then softer. "But they don't get you either." The car moved forward. Faster now. Too fast. Because something had already shifted outside their control. Up ahead, the lead vehicle swerved slightly. Not dramatically, but enough. Adrian's gaze lifted instantly. His expression didn't change, but his eyes did. Danger. Immediate. Calculated. The next second, everything stopped. The convoy never reached the end of the bridge. It happened in a moment that didn't announce itself. 1 second the armored vehicles moved through the storm, headlights cutting across rain and steel, and the next, everything shifted. The road ahead tightened, the air changed, and something unseen stepped into their path. Adrian felt it before he saw it. Danger didn't need confirmation. It revealed itself in instinct. "Stay down," he said quietly. Lena's heart started pounding instantly, her breath catching as the vehicle slowed just enough to feel wrong. She didn't question him this time. She moved, lowering herself instinctively, her body reacting before her mind fully understood. Then the world outside fractured. Not loudly, not chaotically, controlled, calculated. The lead vehicle halted at an unnatural angle, forcing the rest of the convoy into a narrow formation. Movement appeared from the edges, shadows stepping into visibility, positions already taken, timing already set. This wasn't random. This was planned. War didn't arrive with warning. It arrived with precision. Adrian didn't wait. The moment the vehicle stopped, he moved. The door opened before the driver could react, and Adrian stepped out into the storm without hesitation. Rain hit his face, soaked into his suit, blurred the world around him, but his focus didn't shift. Because control didn't disappear under pressure. It sharpened. Lena stayed inside, her body frozen between fear and disbelief as she watched through the rain-streaked glass. She had heard stories about men like him, about what they did, about how they operated. But hearing was not the same as seeing. This was different. This was real. Adrian didn't move like someone reacting. He moved like someone who had already seen this outcome. His presence alone shifted the field, his voice cutting through the storm with quiet authority as commands were given. Not shouted, not rushed, but precise enough to be followed instantly. The men around him moved with him, not ahead, not behind, with, because this was not chaos. This was structure, and he was at the center of it. Lena's breath became uneven as she watched, her fingers tightening against the seat, her mind trying to understand what she was seeing. The man who had stood in a courthouse lobby, silent and controlled, now carried something else entirely. Not loss of control, the pure form of it. Danger didn't exist around him. It answered to him. The storm masked the edges of everything, but one thing remained clear. Adrian never stepped away from the vehicle. He positioned himself in front of it, between her and everything else. Protect. The word became real in that moment. Not spoken, proven. Time blurred. Seconds stretched into something longer, heavier, until finally, silence returned. Not complete, but enough. The movement outside slowed, then stopped entirely. Adrian stood still for a moment, his breath steady again, his posture unchanged despite everything that had just passed. Rain continued falling around him, but the tension that had filled the bridge moments ago had already been removed. Handled, controlled, finished. The door opened. He stepped back inside. Water traced down his sleeves, his presence carrying the cold edge of what had just happened, but his expression had already returned to its usual calm. Lena stared at him, not with the same fear. Something else had entered her gaze now. Understanding. You knew, she said quietly. Adrian didn't respond immediately, because the answer didn't matter. What mattered was the result. They won't try the same move twice, he said. His voice was steady, unaffected, but beneath it, something had shifted. Because this wasn't just an attack. This was confirmation. The convoy began moving again, slower this time, more controlled, the storm still pressing around them but no longer hiding anything. Inside, Lena's breath slowly steadied, her heart still pounding but no longer from the same place. Because for the first time, safe didn't feel like a lie. Not completely. Not yet. But enough to change something inside her. The silence didn't last long. A message came through. Short, direct, from one of Adrian's men. Captured. Alive. Adrian read it without expression, then responded with a single instruction. Bring him in. Minutes later, another message arrived. Not structured. Not controlled. Different. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly as he read it. Lena watched him closely. What is it? She asked. He didn't answer immediately, because the next part didn't fit into anything he expected. Finally, he spoke. Low, almost a whisper. The order didn't come from the shelter. A pause. His gaze shifted forward, something colder settling beneath the surface. It came from someone closer. Lena's breath caught again. How close? Adrian didn't look at her this time, because some answers changed everything. Close enough to stand beside me. Silence filled the vehicle once more. Then, he said the name. The mansion did not feel like a home. It felt like a fortress pretending to be one. High walls, controlled entry points, silent guards positioned where shadows met light. Everything inside Adrian Moetti's estate was designed with one purpose: control. Not comfort, not warmth. Control that could not be broken from the outside or the inside. And yet, for the first time in years, Lena Hart found herself breathing without constant fear pressing against her chest. She didn't trust it. Not fully. But she couldn't deny it either. The private clinic inside the mansion was quiet, removed from the rest of the structure, its soft lighting and clean environment almost too perfect. Her injuries had been treated carefully, without questions, without force. The staff spoke little, moved efficiently, and left no room for unnecessary interaction. Everything felt managed. Safe. The word still felt unfamiliar. Adrian visited rarely during the first days, but his presence lingered in every detail. Security doubled outside her room. Access restricted. Every movement tracked without being obvious. It wasn't confinement the way St. Mercy had been, but it wasn't freedom either. It was something in between, and Lena didn't know what to call it. One evening, she stepped into the main living area for the first time. The space was vast, elegant, built with quiet luxury that didn't need to announce itself. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the lights below flickering like something distant and unreachable. Adrian stood there, still, looking out. He didn't turn immediately when she entered. "You're walking better," he said. His voice carried without effort. Low, controlled. Lena crossed her arms slightly, staying near the edge of the room. "I'm not staying here forever." Adrian turned then, his gaze settling on her with that same unreadable intensity. "No one asked you to." A pause. "But you are staying, for now." Not a command, but not optional either. Lena's heart pounded slightly, not from fear this time, but from the tension that always existed when he was close. There was something about him she couldn't place. Not kindness, not cruelty, something else. "You don't trust me," he added. She didn't hesitate. No, his expression didn't change. "Good," he said quietly. "Trust gets people hurt." That should have reassured her. It didn't. But something about the honesty shifted something small inside her. The nights that followed became something unexpected. Not soft, not peaceful, but quieter. Adrian began appearing more often, not to question, not to control openly, but to observe. Sometimes he brought books, placing them on the table without explanation. Other times, meals arrived with him, and he stayed just long enough to ensure she ate. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The silence between them changed. Less guarded, more aware. One night, as she reached for a glass, her sleeve shifted slightly, exposing faint scars along her wrist. Adrian's gaze caught it instantly. His expression didn't harden, but something beneath it tightened. "Who did that?" he asked. Lena pulled her sleeve down quickly. "It doesn't matter." "It does," he said, a whisper, but heavier than any raised voice. She looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time, she saw something unexpected. Not just power, loneliness, hidden beneath years of control and decisions that left no room for connection. "You can't fix everything," she said quietly. Adrian didn't respond immediately, because she wasn't wrong. "I don't need to fix everything," he replied after a moment. "Just what's mine." The word lingered between them. Dangerous, unclear, but not empty. Lena didn't step back, and that changed something. Days passed, and he began teaching her. Not gently, not harshly, effectively. How to read exits, how to move without drawing attention, how to understand patterns, how to survive outside a system that tried to control every step. She learned fast, because she already knew how to survive. Now she was learning how to control it. "You're not reacting anymore," Adrian said one evening. "I stopped reacting a long time ago," she replied. A pause. Then quieter. "I just didn't know what to do next." Adrian stepped closer, not invading, but close enough that she felt the shift in air again. "Now you do." Her heart started pounding again. Not from fear. Something else. Something unfamiliar. Something dangerous in a different way. Across the mansion, another pair of eyes watched. Vanessa Cole. Elegant. Perfect. Untouchable in public. But behind that, something colder lived. She saw the shift. The distance between Adrian and Lena closing. The attention changing. The balance moving. And she understood exactly what that meant. Not emotionally. Strategically. Threat. That night, while the mansion settled into silence, Lena moved quietly through the corridors, following instinct more than thought. Something had been off. Something she couldn't explain. Until she found it. A hidden access point. Subtle. Carefully concealed. She opened it slowly. The basement below was colder, darker, untouched by the controlled elegance above. Inside, she found the truth. A ledger. Old. Detailed. Precise. Names. Transactions. Years of records. And one name connected to all of it. Vanessa Cole. Lena's breath caught. Her heart pounding again. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This was the system. And it had been inside the mansion, all along. The ledger didn't feel like evidence. It felt like a fracture. Lena placed it on the table between them, her fingers releasing it slowly, as if the weight of everything inside it had followed her upstairs. The room remained silent, but something in the air shifted the moment Adrian looked down at it. Not curiosity, recognition, because betrayal, once revealed, didn't surprise men like him. It confirmed what they already suspected. Adrian opened the ledger without hesitation, his gaze scanning through the entries with controlled precision. Names, dates, transfers, patterns hidden beneath years of silence. But this time, it wasn't just a system exposed. It was personal. Vanessa Cole, Marcus Vale. The names didn't sit on the page like strangers. They stood there like people who had walked beside him. Trusted, respected, protected. Loyalty turned into something else entirely. Betrayal. Lena watched him carefully, her breath steady but her heart pounding beneath it. This wasn't just about truth anymore. This was about what he would choose to do with it. "Say it," she said quietly. Adrian didn't look up immediately, because some truths didn't need to be spoken. "They built it inside my empire," he said finally. Not anger, not disbelief, just fact. Lena nodded once. "And they've been running it for years." Silence followed, heavy, because this wasn't an external threat. This was rot. Inside the structure, inside his control. Adrian closed the ledger slowly, his jaw tightening just enough to reveal what he refused to show openly. War. Not outside. Inside. Within hours, the council was called. Every captain, every voice that mattered. They gathered not out of respect, but necessity. Because when something like this surfaced, silence was no longer an option. The room filled with controlled tension, eyes shifting, alliances forming before words were even spoken. Some already knew. Some suspected. Some pretended. Adrian stood at the head. Still. Unmoving. Power didn't need to announce itself. It existed in the way no one spoke first. Until Vanessa stepped forward. Elegant. Composed. Untouched. "You're making a mistake," she said calmly, her voice carrying through the room like something practiced. Adrian didn't respond. She continued. "That girl is manipulating you. She's been inside systems like this long enough to learn how to use them." Lena stood at the edge of the room, feeling every gaze turn toward her. Fear tried to rise again, but it didn't control her. Not anymore. Vanessa's expression remained soft, convincing, her tone perfectly measured. She stole documents, fabricated connections. This, she gestured slightly, is her way out. A murmur spread through the captains. Doubt. Exactly where Vanessa wanted it. Marcus stepped forward next, his presence quieter but calculated. "We've all built this empire together," he said, "and now one outsider walks in and tears it apart." The room shifted. Not loudly, but enough. Loyalty was being tested, and it was breaking. "Hand her over," one of the captains said. Another followed. "This doesn't concern her anymore. It concerns the empire." The word echoed. Empire, power, control, all threatened by one truth. Adrian didn't move, didn't interrupt. He let them speak, because sometimes betrayal needed to reveal itself fully. Then he stepped forward, and the room fell silent. "No," he said. One word. Final. Absolute. Every voice stopped instantly, because despite everything, he was still the king. "She doesn't leave this room," Adrian continued, his voice calm but carrying something deeper now. "Not because she belongs here." A pause. His gaze shifted toward Lena. "But because she's telling the truth." The room fractured. Not physically. Internally. Sides drawn. War began. Lena felt it immediately. The shift. This wasn't going to end quietly. And she understood something clearly now. As long as she stayed, this wouldn't stop. That night, she made her decision. Not out of fear. Out of purpose. She left. Quietly. Before anyone could stop her. Because if she removed herself from the equation, maybe the empire would stabilize. Maybe the war would end. She didn't get far. The city lights stretched ahead of her. The road open. Freedom close enough to feel real for the first time. Then, everything stopped. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just sudden. A vehicle pulled ahead. Another behind. Timing too perfect to be coincidence. Lena's breath caught. Her heart pounding again. Danger. Immediate. Calculated. She stepped back instinctively. And the world shifted. Minutes later, far across the city, Adrian's phone lit up. A message. No words. Just an image. A small velvet box. Opened. Inside, Lena's necklace, covered in blood. And the war became personal. They didn't take Lena back to St. Mercy. They took her somewhere worse. The abandoned headquarters. A place that once pretended to be safe. Now stripped of its illusion. Left hollow, but still functioning beneath the surface. The walls were colder here. The silence heavier. As if everything that had happened inside had never truly left. Lena stood in the center of it again. But this time she wasn't the same girl. Fear was still there. It always would be. But it no longer controlled her breath. It no longer dictated her choices. It sharpened her instead. Turned every instinct into something precise. Something useful. Around her, the other girls watched. Some broken. Some silent. Some already giving up. Lena saw it in their eyes. The same look she once carried. The belief that there was no way out. No one coming. No end to the system that held them. That belief was the real cage. And she refused to let it exist anymore. "We're not waiting," she said quietly. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Because something in it carried certainty. The girls looked at her, uncertain at first. Then slowly, something shifted. Hope. Not loud. Not obvious. But real enough to grow. Lena moved quickly after that, her mind already mapping the structure, remembering old layouts, predicting changes. 3 years inside places like this had taught her more than survival. It taught her how they worked, where they failed. She began assigning roles, not forcefully, not with authority, but with clarity. One girl watched corridors. Another tracked movement patterns. A third quietly gathered objects that could be used, not as weapons of violence, but as tools of distraction, of timing, of escape. Hidden paths, alarm panels, weak points. Everything became part of the plan. This wasn't panic. This was strategy. She wasn't reacting anymore. She was leading. Queen. The word didn't need to be spoken. It existed in the way the others followed her. Outside, Adrian moved with the same precision. The moment Lena disappeared, his empire shifted into war. Not chaos. Not blind reaction. Controlled, targeted movement. Loyal men only. No uncertainty. No hesitation. Location confirmed, one of his captains said. Adrian didn't slow. Then we end it, he replied. His voice carried no anger, only finality, because this wasn't just about rescuing her. This was about destroying what had been hiding inside his world. Inside the building, the tension built toward a breaking point. Lena stood near the central corridor, her heart pounding, her breath steady as she listened to the rhythm of movement around her. Everything was ready, everything aligned. Now, she whispered. The system shifted instantly. Lights flickered, alarms triggered, but not as expected. Confusion spread. Doors unlocked where they shouldn't. Paths opened. The structure broke from inside. Girls moved, not in panic, but in direction, following the plan. Following her. Lena didn't stay behind. She moved through it, freeing doors, guiding others, pulling them out of spaces that once held them. Protect. Not just herself. All of them. The moment Adrian entered, the building was already changing. He expected resistance. He found disruption. And at the center of it, her. Not waiting. Not hiding. Moving. Leading. His men secured the outer structure, but Adrian didn't stop. He moved forward, his eyes scanning until they found her. Lena, standing in the middle of controlled chaos, her presence steady, her movements precise, her expression no longer defined by fear. Something shifted in him. Recognition, not of who she was, of what she had become. Vanessa appeared moments later, calm, composed, untouched by the collapse around her. You really thought you could break this? She said, her voice smooth, controlled. Lena turned to face her, not shrinking, not stepping back. No, she said quietly. A pause. I knew I could expose it. Vanessa's smile faltered, just slightly, because this wasn't a confrontation she controlled. Not anymore. Lena held up the device. The evidence. Live. Streaming. To media. To authorities. To every system Vanessa once hid behind. Names. Records. Truth. Released. Public. Irreversible. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was the sound of an empire shifting. Vanessa didn't lose through force. She lost through exposure. And she knew it. Lena lowered the device slowly, her breath steady, her heart still pounding, but not from fear, from something else. Power. She was not a victim. She became powerful. Adrian stepped beside her, not in front, not shielding, standing with her, equal. And in that moment, he saw it clearly. Not the girl he had protected, the queen she had become. But victory never ended cleanly, because somewhere in the chaos, someone was missing. Marcus. Gone. With money. With files. With names that extended beyond this building, beyond this empire. And those names were bigger than all of them. The city didn't see the moment it changed. There was no announcement. No public collapse. No chaos spilling into the streets. From the outside, Boston looked the same. Lights glowing across glass towers. Traffic moving in quiet patterns. Power still sitting exactly where it always had. But beneath it, everything had shifted. Adrian Moretti didn't rebuild his empire. He redefined it. The networks that once operated in silence, hidden routes, controlled systems, transactions buried under layers of legitimacy, were raced with a precision no one could trace. Not replaced, not redirected, removed. Every connection tied to trafficking disappeared without leaving noise behind. Those who once relied on it found nothing left to stand on. Systems that had taken years to build collapsed in days, not because they were attacked, but because they were exposed. Vanessa Cole didn't fall publicly. She vanished, her name removed from influence, Her presence erased from every space she once controlled. No trial, no spectacle, just absence. And in a world like Adrian's, absence carried more finality than anything else. Marcus ran. Across cities. Across borders. Carrying what remained. Money, files, fragments of a system that no longer existed the way it once had. But running wasn't escape. It was delay. Because Adrian didn't chase recklessly. He hunted with patience. And patience always ended the same way. But while the outside world adjusted slowly, something else was being built. Something real. Lena Hart didn't disappear into the aftermath. She stepped forward. Not into power that was given to her. Into power she created. The wealth seized from the network didn't return to silence. It became structure. Real shelters. Real protection. Places that didn't hide behind words like safe, but actually were. Every system she built had oversight. Transparency. Layers that couldn't be manipulated the way St. Mercy had been. The girls who entered those spaces weren't watched. They were protected, given something Lena never had when she needed it most. Choice. And for the first time, safe wasn't a lie. It was something she controlled. Adrian watched it happen. Not from a distance. Close. Always close. The king who once ruled through control now moved differently. His empire didn't shrink, it evolved. Legal influence replaced hidden operations. Protection replaced exploitation. Power remained exactly where it had always been, but its purpose changed. Loyalty shifted with it, not forced. Chosen, because those who stayed understood something simple. This empire didn't destroy anymore. It decided what survived. One evening, Lena stood at the balcony of the same courthouse building where everything began. The storm from that night was gone, replaced by clear skies and quiet air. The city stretched out in front of her again, but it no longer felt unreachable. It felt different. She felt different. "You didn't leave," Adrian said from behind her. His voice was calm, steady, carrying the same quiet authority, but something beneath it had changed. She turned slightly, meeting his gaze. "I could have," she said. A pause. "But I didn't want to." That was the truth. Not survival. Choice. Adrian stepped closer, the distance between them closing without hesitation now. There was no tension left in it. No uncertainty. Just understanding. Mine. The word existed again. But now it meant something else entirely. Not control. Connection. "You changed everything," he said quietly. Lena shook her head once. "No," she replied softly. "You let it change." A faint shift passed through his expression. Something rare. Something almost unnoticeable. A smile. Not wide. Not obvious. But real. And that was the moment everything truly ended. And began. The gala that followed weeks later didn't resemble the one that had come before. The same space. The same polished floors. The same towering architecture. But the energy was different. Where Lena once stood hunted, she now entered honored. Heads turned, not in judgment, not in dismissal, but in recognition. Not of what she had survived, of what she had become. Queen. Not by title, by truth. Adrian stood beside her, not ahead, not leading beside. The king who no longer needed to stand alone. They moved through the room together, not as symbols of power, but as proof of change. The music began. Soft, controlled. The world outside continued without knowing what had shifted inside it. As they stepped into the center, their movements slow, deliberate, the distance between them non-existent now. Lena's breath remained steady, her heart no longer pounding from fear, because there was nothing left to run from. Adrian leaned slightly closer, his voice low, almost a whisper. "This is yours too. Not given. Shared." Lena met his gaze, and for the first time, she believed it. They moved together, the room fading around them, the past settling into something that no longer controlled the present. Until a phone vibrated. Subtle, almost forgotten. Adrian didn't check it immediately, but Lena felt the shift. Small, precise. Danger never disappeared completely. It waited. Adrian finally looked. His expression didn't change, but his eyes did. He turned the screen slightly toward her. One file. Stamped confidential. One line highlighted. Another shelter. Another city. Another king. Silence returned. because the war had never really ended. It had only moved. Some stories don't just end, they stay with you long after the screen fades. If this one made you feel something, don't just watch, be part of it. Like, share it with someone who believes truth always finds a way, and subscribe, because the next story might be even darker. And now tell me this. If you were Lena, would you still choose to stand beside the king, knowing another war is already waiting?